Good morning, class 8th. This is your chemistry book, okay? And we have discussed our chapter number 1 and 2 in our previous videos. From today, we are going to start our 4th chapter, okay? So, our 4th chapter, the title of the 4th chapter is The Structure of the Atom, okay? So, we are going to discuss about the structure of the atom in this chapter, okay? Now, before discussing the structure of the atom, first we need to know what is atom, okay? First we need to know what is atom and how did it came into origin, okay? How did we came to know about the atoms, okay? So, as you know, everything is ultimately made up of atoms. Everything in the universe, they are made up of atoms, okay? We have talked about matter, okay? So, everything that occupies a space, has mass, any substance is known as matter, okay? So, every matter, they are made up of atoms. Now, it was earlier thought that atoms are indivisible, atoms cannot divide, okay? But after that, when inventions took place, discoveries took place, so we came to know that atoms are also divisible and they are divided into subatomic particles, okay? So, that only we are going to discuss in this whole chapter. So, our first topic is how the ideas of the atoms emerged. Okay, how the ideas of the atoms emerged. So, first scientist name you have to just keep in mind, that was Kannad. Okay, he was a great philosopher, great Indian philosopher, Kannad. So, in 6th century BC, if you go way back to 6th century BC, okay, so Indian philosopher Kannad, he came up with the following idea. He just told, he didn't give any proof, okay, it was just in his mind, and he said the theory, okay, that matter is not continuous and made up of tiny particles called परमाणुs, okay? So matter is not continuous, matter एक साथ नहीं बना हुआ है, and it is made up of very tiny particles, very small particles, and he named them परमाणु, okay? He was an Indian philosopher, so he named it परमाणु. Now what is the meaning of परमाणु? Param means final or ultimate, okay? In Sanskrit, this param means final or ultimate, and anu means particle, okay? Means matter is the final particle, ultimate particle. He didn't know about the atoms, okay? But that time he told the name Parmanu. Okay, so matter, it is made up of ultimate particles, indivisible particles, final particles, and he named them Parmanu, okay? Now, Kannad further said that two or more Parmanus combines to form bigger particles. Okay, Parmanus are the indivisible or the ultimate particles, and they combine together, one or two or three Parmanus, they combine together to form the bigger particles. Okay, this theory was given by Kannad, and Kannad was an Indian philosopher, and he gave the Sanskrit name Parmanu to the atoms. Okay. Now, next came Democritus and Leucippus. You have to pronounce them, okay? Democritus and Leucippus. So, in 5th century BC, the Greek philosophers, they were from Greek, okay? So, the Greek philosophers, Democritus and Leucippus, came up with a similar idea. Unhe bhi same idea aaya. What was that similar idea? They thought that on dividing a piece of substance, one would ultimately get a particle that could not be divided further. If we take a substance, if we take a book, okay, and we start on dividing it and we keep on dividing it, ultimately one particle will be there that will not divide. Okay, that will not divide. It will be indivisible. Okay, so he came up with that particular idea and he gave the name atomos. Okay, in Sanskrit, Kannad gave the name Parmanu, and in Greek, Democritus and Leucippus, they gave the name atomos. Okay, so what is the meaning of atomos in Greek? Atomos means indivisible. Okay, the particle that cannot be divided further, indivisible. Okay, so to these ultimate particles, he named them atomos. Understood till here? First one was an Indian philosopher, Kannad. Okay, so he gave the name Parmanu to the indivisible particles, and then came Democritus and Leucippus. They have the similar theory, they have the similar concept in their mind, and they named them atomos in Greek. Okay, then finally Dalton came, and Dalton's theory came. Okay, so these theories of Kannad as well as Democritus, they were not experimentally proved. Okay, so they just remained forgotten for more than 2000 years. After that, experimental chemistry developed. Okay, everything was based on experiments and the proofs. Okay, so it became necessary to explain the observed facts. They have observed it, but it became necessary to prove them, to prove the observed facts. Okay, so in 1803, English chemist John Dalton put forward his atomic theory. So finally, John Dalton, after so many experiments, okay, so many experimental chemistry, in 1803 he gave an atomic theory. So you have to memorize it. Who gave the atomic theory? Points of atomic theory. That was John Dalton. Okay, he was an English chemist. He gave the atomic theory, John Dalton, in 1803. So what were the points in the atomic theory? First one was, elements are made up of very small particles of matter called atoms, derived from the Greek word atomos. Okay, so first point was, all the elements in the universe, okay, all the substances, all the matter, all the elements in the universe, they are made up of very tiny particles, very small particles of matter, and they are called atoms. And he derived this word atom from the Greek word atomos, which meant indivisible. Okay, now second one was, atoms are indivisible. He also said atoms are indivisible. The atoms cannot be divided further. Okay, so atoms are indivisible. Then the third point of his atomic theory was, the atoms of an element have the same weight. Okay, the atoms of the element, if you are taking same element, then the atoms of that same element will have the same weight. Okay, but if you are taking atoms of different elements, then they will have different weights. Understood? Now fifth point was, it is the atoms of the elements that take part in a chemical reaction. If you are taking an element, so element is made up of atoms, so atoms take part in chemical reaction, not the whole element. Okay, atoms individually, if there are two atoms in an element, they individually take part in a chemical reaction. Okay, and the last point was, atom of an element combine in a simple numerical ratio with those of other elements to form a compound. Okay, so the atoms of one element, they will combine with the atoms of another element to form a compound. Okay, to form a compound. So these were the 6 points of the atomic theory, and it was given by John Dalton in 1803. So what did we get? We got the definition of atom. What is atom? An atom is defined as the smallest part of an element that take part in a chemical reaction. Okay, it is the smallest part or smallest particle of an element that takes part in a chemical reaction. Understood about the Dalton's atomic theory? Okay. Now comes the subatomic particles. Okay. Now what are subatomic? We can understood it from the name. Okay, subatomic means atoms के भी अंदर. Okay, now in the late 19th century, it was proved that atoms are divisible. Till the Dalton's theory, it was noticed that atoms are indivisible. But in 19th century, because of some of the experiments, it was proved that atoms are also divisible, and it was later found that atoms are made up of 3 subatomic or fundamental particles. You have to underline this, the subatomic or the fundamental particles. What are those fundamental particles? They are electrons, protons and neutrons. Okay, electrons, protons and neutrons. What are the 3 subatomic particles in an element? They are electrons, protons and neutrons. Okay, so now we will discuss about the discoveries of these 3 subatomic particles. Okay, so our first subatomic particle is the electron. We will now discuss about the electron. Okay, so under ordinary conditions, gases are bad conductors of electricity. We all know gases are poor conductors of electricity. Okay, but a gas can become a good conductor of electricity by 2 conditions. What are those 2 conditions? First condition is, if the pressure of the gas is very low, say 10 millimeter of mercury or lower. If we decrease the pressure of the gas, okay, if the pressure of the gas is made low, then we can make gas a good conductor of electricity. And the second condition is, the voltage applied is very high. If we apply a high voltage to the tube, okay, if we apply a high voltage to the gas, then we can make gas a good conductor of electricity. It should be 10,000 volts. Okay, so by the pressure, by decreasing the pressure and by increasing the voltage, by these two conditions we can make gas a good conductor of electricity. But how are these conditions achieved? Okay, where are these conditions achieved? These conditions are achieved in a discharge tube. Okay, these conditions are achieved in a discharge tube. Now what is a discharge tube? So now we will discuss about the discharge tube. What is a discharge tube and how we came to know about the cathode rays? What are cathode rays? Okay, so first we will discuss about discharge tube. A discharge tube is a long glass tube at the two ends of which are sealed two metal plates. You can look into the diagrams. Okay, you can look into 4.1 figure. So this is a long discharge tube, long glass tube. Okay, it is made up of glass, it is very long and it has two ends. It has two ends and at these two ends two metal plates are sealed here. Okay, two metal plates are sealed here. Now these plates can be connected to high voltage source. Okay, these two plates, they can be connected to high voltage source. Okay, and therefore these two plates, they are known as electrodes. You have to memorize it, you have to keep it in mind. What are these two metal plates known as? These are known as electrodes. Okay, now the electrode which is connected to the negative terminal of the source. There are two terminals, negative and positive. Okay, so the electrode that is connected to the negative terminal of the source, it is called cathode. Okay, it is called cathode. Okay, and the one connected to the positive terminal, the one which is connected to the positive terminal, it is known as anode. You have to keep it in mind and it is very important for the chapter, for the further chapter. Okay, so this is a long glass tube. It has two metal plates at the end. Okay, it has two terminals, positive and negative. So the plate which is connected to negative terminal, the electrode which is connected to negative terminal, it is called cathode, and the one connected to the positive terminal, the electrode connected to the positive terminal, it is anode. Okay, now there is also a side tube. You can look into the diagram. There is also a side tube which can be connected to an exhaust pump. Now what is the work of exhaust pump? It is used for lowering the pressure of the gas inside the discharge tube. There is a gas present in the discharge tube, and to lower that pressure, because if we will lower that pressure, it will become a good conductor of electricity. Okay, so to lower that pressure, exhaust pump is used. Understood this much about the discharge tube? Now what happens in a discharge tube? When we apply a high voltage across the terminals and the pressure inside the tube is 0.01 to 0.001 millimeter of mercury. Okay, when we are applying, there were two conditions to make gas a good conductor of electricity. So when we apply a high voltage in these two terminals, cathode and anode, okay, by this high voltage source, okay, we are connected it to a high voltage source. Okay, and through this exhaust pump we are lowering the pressure of the gas to 0.01 to 0.001, that is very low. Okay, millimeter of mercury. Okay, so what happens? The ends of the tube opposite to the cathode starts glowing. Now the cathode is this one. Okay, so the end of the tube which is opposite to this part, the end of the tube which is opposite to the cathode, okay, it will start glowing, and this process is known as fluorescence. Okay, this process is known as fluorescence. The process of glowing, it is known as fluorescence. Okay, now investigations have shown that some invisible rays starting from the cathode fall on the opposite wall of the tube, causing fluorescence. Why this fluorescence occurred? Because some rays, some invisible rays were coming out from the cathode. Okay, they were traveling in straight lines and then it was falling on the opposite wall of the cathode. Okay, and then it started glowing, and then it created the fluorescence. Okay, so what are these rays named as? Because since these rays are coming from the cathode, okay, so that's why these rays were named as cathode rays. Okay, these rays were named as cathode rays. Okay, this much is clear to everyone. the two conditions to make gas a good conductor of electricity, about the discharge tube and what happens in the discharge tube and how are cathode rays formed. We have explained through this diagram. Okay, so this topic is enough for today. In our next video, we will discuss about the characteristics of cathode rays and about the other subatomic particles. Okay, till then you have to revise this chapter up till this topic. Okay, thank you for today.